जिंदगी प्यार का गीत है जिसे हर दिल को गाना पड़ेगा, जिंदगी गम का सागर भी है, हंस के उस पार जाना पड़ेगा. I tried talking to about the panchayats in about 200 villages around my city. I wanted to understand what is the condition of people with visual impairment in these villages, and they told me that most of them are either dependent on their parents, and they're so dependent that they won't even eat food on their own. When I asked that what do they do for their living, they were like, ma'am kya hi karenge, andhe hain.
Anchal, you were also the first blind person in your college. How was the atmosphere over there?
The most difficult kind of inclusion is social inclusion. This is something that national law universities, law schools in general, colleges lack. They do not have conversations with people. People who are like 17, 18-year-olds who enter a college, they have no idea about disability. They do not know how to treat their peer with disability like one of them.
Do you see any particular improvements in the infrastructure of courts?
Trial courts are not accessible at all. I mean, and like infrastructurally, digitally, as well as in terms of providing support system, poor on all three counts.
When we talk about these Supreme Court decisions in the recent times, where do you think we're, as a society, as a system, falling back?
Every problem that a person with disability faces, it stems from a bias which is not rooted in reality, a bias that has never been researched on.
Anchal, what advice would you give to young law students, young lawyers with disability?
Don't think that it's the end of the world. People are still very ashamed of calling themselves a person with disability. And I think first is to get rid of that shame.
The chief handicap of a blind is not the blindness, but the attitude of seeing people towards them. Dear viewers, these words were of Helen Keller, a renowned author, a disability rights activist, and most importantly, a woman who did not let her life situations come in the way of her dreams. Today we have with us Anchal Bhatheja, a young lawyer who did not let anyone undermine her potential despite all the odds that she faced. Anchal is a research fellow at Vidhi Center and is also practicing at the Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court. So before we hop on to understanding your legal journey in the profession, would you like to tell us something about yourself, and when did you first get to know that there has been an onset of the visual impairment?
I was born with a condition called retinopathy of prematurity, and by virtue of that I was rendered blind in one eye since birth, and the other eye had partial vision of about 30% as compared against eye that has full sight. Till the age of 16, my left eye was pretty functional. It was about 2 weeks before my board examination that everything started appearing hazy. I visited the doctor and they told me that my condition was worsening, and if I do not undergo a surgery within the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I might lose my complete eyesight and I might be rendered blind. It was about also 2 weeks before my board examination, so I hastened and I went to Chennai Sankara Nethralaya for my treatment, and I came back about a week before my board exam after the surgery was done, and thereafter I gave my board exams, and I did not have enough of time to ask CBSE for a different question paper which does not have site-based questions. So I had to attempt a question paper which did have questions from geometry and physics diagrams, etc. But I ended up scoring a 10 GPA in grade 10. After that I underwent 3 more surgeries, but they were of no avail, and in about October or September of 2016, my ophthalmologist told me that there was no further cure. And that's how this journey as such as a blind person started. So I'm technically a late blind and not blind since birth. After that I went to a bunch of schools, in my city only, including the school that I studied for about 12 years. But they refused me admission, saying that you are no longer a normal quote-unquote child. You're a special quote-unquote child, and therefore you should go to a special school. But at the end, after a lot of negotiation, finally one of the schools, St. Xavier's, Bathinda, they gave me admission. And after that, I simultaneously prepared for my grade 12 examination. I also started preparing for CLAT. In grade 12th, I ended up topping my district, and I also took CLAT, and it was a matter of fate, destiny, that I ended up in National Law School, Bangalore, and I started my legal degree, law degree, in 2018.
So, Anchal, in one of your previous interviews, you mentioned how your family members were initially apprehensive that after the onset of your visual impairment, whether you'll be able to complete your education or not. So, when you were faced with such situations where your potential was undermined, how did you face those situations?
So, family-wise, I lost my mother at the age of 15, and she really, really believed in me. After that, I wanted to become a doctor, but it's a matter of big coincidence that 1 week before I started suspecting some issue with my eye, I had visited another doctor who told me that you can take up PCB and it won't really hurt your eyes. Go do whatever you want. Sky is your limit. And a week after that, they tell me that you might go blind. At that point, now there have been a bunch of jurisprudence around this, that people with disabilities can also get admitted into medical courses and specialized courses. But this is back in 2016, when Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act had also not been passed. This is before that. Interestingly, I went blind about 3 months before our PwD Act was passed. So I didn't have the vocabulary, also the awareness to still negotiate with institutions to let me still become a doctor. So I decided to rather go for humanities. But problem arose on many counts. First was my gender, of course. My father felt that it might not be a great idea for me to go outside the city and study, because I am more vulnerable to, I might face issues with safety, etc. And then there was also awareness among other members in the family. But eventually, my father and my sister's conviction and my friends' support, who kept on encouraging me, that really helped me in figuring out my niche. I remember when I took CLAT and I came back home and I asked Papa that if at all I make it to NLS Bangalore, would you send me there? I remember reading a Kaur post about it where it said that there are a lot of snakes on campus. And I told Papa that I'm very scared of snakes. If I go there, how will we ensure my safety? So my father had joked and he said, let it happen first, and if at all it is to happen, then God will show you the way. And he's a very religious man, so that's what he always says, that whenever something comes your way, God will show you your way, your mother will show you the way. You don't need to worry about it. And that's how I navigated family, and that's how the support of my father, my sister, my friends, and most importantly, I'm sure she's still looking at me from somewhere. Her support has really helped me navigate through biggest challenges that have come my way.
Anchal, you mentioned about your journey all the way to CLAT and now cracking NLS Bangalore, and we'll come to that a little later. But I want to understand that what was it that motivated you to take up law? Because initially you wanted to become a doctor, and then what was that point which actually led to that switch?
There were two inflection points. First was that about 3 to 4 schools told me that they can't take me. And that was a very shocking and appalling thing for me, because in my head, I had gotten the best GPA that a person could in grade 10, despite not having access to a question paper that has text-based questions, despite having attempted those convex-concave diagrams and drawing rough diagrams on a paper and telling my scribe how to do it. I thought it was a very difficult task, and I still was able to do it. They told me that we can't take you. And even when the the St. Xavier's took me in. They told me that we are taking you because we feel that you're extraordinary. And that was very disturbing for me, because I felt, why should I get admitted into a school only because I'm extraordinary? Any person who's ordinary, who's mediocre, who's below average, has the right to education, and that's what we've been told since forever, since we've started reading about civics since grade 3rd. That was the first inflection point. And the second inflection point was that in 2016-17, whether I was 16 or 17-year-old, I tried talking to about the panchayats in about 200 villages around my city. And I wanted to understand what is the condition of people with visual impairment in these villages. And they told me that most of them are either dependent on their parents, and they're so dependent that they won't even eat food on their own. And when I asked that what do they do for their living, they were like, ma'am, kya hi karenge, andhe hain. That was another inflection point. And I thought to myself that since I am fortunate enough to have access to education, I have a supportive father, I somewhat know that vocabulary of rights, I should use it to help people who are so downtrodden that they might not even have consciousness that they have a right, let alone the vocabulary of that right. And these two inflection points, and the option of medicine was anyway off the table. So I thought, why not do something that is not just talking about doing something, but doing something. And I think life came full circle, because I remember my legal methods professor saying in one of the first classes of legal methods that, I will not teach you law, I will teach you how to do law. So that the action-oriented discipline, I think, nothing is a more action-oriented discipline than law. And I think it helped me to translate my thoughts and what I felt, my emotions, into actions. These were the two things that majorly motivated me to take up law.
So how did you navigate through the challenges that would come in way of preparing for CLAT?
See, as for my 12th preparation, grade 12 preparation, most NCERT books are available in audio format. So that is pretty much sorted. I'm not going into the inclusivity of schools question. That is an uphill battle even today. We are not in a situation where we can say that even like 5 to 10% of our schools are fully inclusive. But as for CLAT coaching and CLAT preparation, and this is a problem that still I encounter, like still clients come to us and tell us that, we have paid lakhs and lakhs of money to this coaching institute, but then reading material is not accessible. They often quote copyright law to say that we can't provide you access to our reading material. And then the physical infrastructure of these coaching institutes was not really great. It was only because of a friend from my school only who wanted to take CLAT, and one random day she called me up and she was like, I don't want to go alone, just accompany me to Chandigarh, we'll go there and prepare. It was only because of that human support that I was able to, because at that point, Bathinda, the place that I come from, didn't really have a very robust coaching industry, which is why I had to go to Chandigarh. And if I took a crash course of 30 days, in those 30 days, they would have bothered me for about 15 to 20 days saying that we will not give you soft copies of our reading material because that will affect our copyright. So I mostly had to rely on my friend's support in terms of navigating that material and also navigating the building infrastructure, etc. So majorly two problems with preparation that were there back in 2017, 2018 and still exist till date is A, physical infrastructure is really poor of these coaching institutes. We have seen what happened in Rajendra Nagar last year during monsoon. And obviously, like, second problem is that digital platforms are not fully accessible. And this is a larger problem, like, let alone private institutions in this country, I would say only 5 to 8% of government websites would also be fully accessible. So if state is so ignorant of its own responsibilities under the RPWD Act, then what can one even expect from private establishments? So, but these are pretty much the two major problems that I faced during my coaching phase, my preparation phase.
So it was your friend who would read out the material to you and you would imbibe it?
Yeah, somewhat, to an extent. Some parts I had online, some parts she would read to me. Especially questions, at that point we didn't have alternative questions for stuff like mental ability and image based questions, seating arrangements, which require a lot of like visual effort, like A is sitting next to B, B is sitting next to C. That requires a lot of visual effort, and I had to take human assistance for navigating those kind of questions.
So during the exam also for CLAT you were given a scribe?
Yes,
for your assistance?
I was given a scribe, yes. And at that point, I was also not very fully adept with screen readers myself, so a part of problem was also me. Now, I am no longer the problem because I know the screen readers, but still third-party applications ranging from SCC Online to Google Documents are not accessible, so that remains the problem. But at that point, I took a scribe and they helped me take the exam, and I, as such, didn't face any major difficulties navigating the exam as such, except it did have some questions which involved a lot of visual effort.
Anchal, you were also the first blind person in your college to attend law school. So how was the atmosphere over there? Were the students, were the seniors, juniors supportive of you, or you had to face certain preconceived notions over there as well?
So I would say there are three different parts of the problem. Not the problem, I mean, three different parts of that infrastructure. One is the infrastructure itself. Second is the faculty. Third is the peer groups. As for infrastructure, digital portals were not accessible. They still aren't fully. And as for physical infrastructure, NLS building is quite old. It's a very topsy-turvy kind of a campus. And it has been built in a very ad hoc manner, that one building came up, then randomly the other one came up. So it has not been planned in accordance with any accessibility standards whatsoever, let alone the recent ones that have come up in 2021. That is as for infrastructure. As for professors and faculty, I would say there were 3-4 professors who were very sensitive. Like Professor Rahul Singh himself encouraged me to take my exams on the computer. Professor Rashmi, Professor Kunal, these people would generally, I think these were the only 2 or 3 professors who would have asked me about my access needs before the courses started. Whereas other professors sometimes did not give in to my access requests even after I reached out to them. Some of them agreed when I insisted too much. So it was a mixed bag, but I will say overall it is a work in progress. And third, as for peers, and this is where I think the biggest problem lies even today, because other things can still be resolved through law. After a point, you can ensure educational inclusion of persons with disability. You can give them employment. You can, give them reservations, etc. through law. The most difficult inclusion of persons with disability, the most difficult kind of inclusion is social inclusion. I always quote this. Korean Cooper wrote this piece called A Letter to a Young Law Student, in which she says maximum learning in law school happens from your peers. It's not from your professors. It's not from anybody else. It's from your peers. And I feel this is something that national law universities, law schools in general, colleges lack. They do not have conversations with people. People who are like 17, 18-year-olds who enter a college, they have no idea about disability. They do not know how to treat their peer with disability like one of them. And why I say it is the biggest problem is because eventually these people are going to become professors. These people are going to go to law firms. These people are going to become judges. These people are going to dispense justice at the end. These people are going to become practicing lawyers. These people are going to become engineers, doctors, architects, influencers. If you do not start having a conversation at this stage, then that ableism just snowballs into something very big. That big building that you're seeing, which is not accessible today, it's because when that architect was 17, 18-year-old, no one really talked to them about disability. So as for the third problem at NLS, I would also say that the conversation about disability with peers was absolutely missing. Thanks to one of my senior, who was the SBA president at that point, My father spoke to him, and he was a nice guy. He spoke to my batch and said that, she's one of you, one among you. Do not treat her any differently. Do not patronize or demonize her. Consider her one among you. So majorly these were the 3 different kinds of challenges that I faced. But luckily they were good people. But I always say good people are not everywhere. Good people come and go, but institutions outlive. Therefore, there's a need to have policies which outlive these good people, to ensure that even when not so good people come, these policies can hold those people accountable.
Anchal, you're a first-generation lawyer. You're a woman lawyer, that too with disability. Now, how have you kind of dealt with systemic discrimination when it comes to these 3 levels altogether? First-generation lawyer, that too a woman, and that too with disability. So, has it been that, you, at a time you faced discrimination altogether? And what is your take on the people's outlook towards such things?
As for first generation lawyer, I remember this one time one professor took us out for dinner, and there a bunch of my batchmates were discussing Upendra Bakshi, and they said that our father does not like Upendra Bakshi. And that day I went home, and I went back to college, and I called up my father, and I told him that you have crossed generations, man. You do not know who Upendra Bakshi is. These people have fathers who do not like Upendra Bakshi. So that's the difference between a first generation lawyer and a person who has someone in their family who can give them that kind of exposure. My dad had no idea. In fact, like the first day on the orientation, I remember my father had written a chit to the person that I mentioned, the SBA president who gave a TED talk to my batchmates about treating me well. My father had written a chit to him in broken English that, son, my daughter is disabled. No one has talked to us about anything. I can't leave her like this 2,000 kilometers away from home. Please do something about it. And he wrote it in fully broken English. And that is the difference between a person who doesn't really have that kind of educational background. And that's how clueless one is. And again, coming back to where the conversation is missing, conversation is also missing with parents with disabilities. No one really assures them that, we are there. Your child has a right, and we will ensure that that right is not taken away from your child. That conversation never happens. But okay, coming back to the question of first generation lawyer, gender and disability, that's on the first generation lawyer bit. On gender, I would say that, I don't think I can say anything which has not been said, but I still say that it's not safe in Delhi. It's a constant battle. You'd go to public places and seek help from people in terms of navigation, and there'd be so many times that security guards would touch you very inappropriately, but you can't say anything because it's a public place and they're anyway helping you out of goodwill of their heart. And this is where your disability comes into the picture, where your disability and gender interacts with each other to make the nature of discrimination and the degree of discrimination so complicated that you can't prove it anywhere. Speaking about my own experience, I've had experiences where I've been subjected to harassment, etc. But there's only so much that law and policy can really do. Like, we have formal complaint mechanisms everywhere, in law school, in workplaces, etc. But when your gender and disability interacts with each other, there are so many times that you do not want to vilify people, because the people you're going to ask for a right from are the people whom you interact with every day. They are the ones who pay you money at the end. They are the ones who give you grades at the end. So that's where I feel that's the fallacy of law. It can't help beyond a point. So as for gender and disability, when it comes together, the problems that one often faces, one is obviously safety, and the second is that one is not even taken very seriously, because see, women are anyway considered irrational, then a person with disability is also considered irrational. So when both these identities, the calculus of both these identities is even more irrationality. So I have experienced sometimes like even like men with disabilities also won't take me as seriously as they would take a man with disability. But it's about breaking those glass ceilings, right? I mean, it's a very slow process, as Ruth Ginsburg said that, you know, I will think that gender equality has been established when all the 9 judges are women, and so many people called her crazy for saying this. But again, yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, we've never questioned 9 men being on the bench ever. Why are we questioning 9 women being on the bench? It's just that you try to couch your patriarchy and your ableism in the language of rationality and reasonableness. So yeah, that's my experience on these 3 aspects.
You mentioned in great detail about how there were lapses in the infrastructure for making it more accessible for persons with disabilities.
Correct.
Do you see any particular improvements in the infrastructure of courts, be it trial court up to the Supreme Court? Have there been any significant changes when it comes to ensuring that lawyers with disabilities are taken care of, there's more accessibility, or no, there's a long way to go over there?
Okay, I'll start with trial courts, because Supreme Court keeps on saying that trial courts are the most important courts of the country. Trial courts are not accessible at all. I mean, and like infrastructurally, digitally, as well as in terms of providing support system, poor on all 3 counts. And this, I'm not even going into trial courts of obscure cities. I'm talking about trial courts in Delhi. It's most of the websites of these courts won't really have audio captures or recaptures. They would have visual captures. The infrastructure is very, very hard to navigate. There is no iota of any human support, and let alone a person with disability, I would say it's not even fully ready to have a lot of women lawyers, honestly. That's for trial courts. As far as high courts are concerned, I can only speak for a bunch. Delhi High Court and Supreme Court today has an accessibility committee which helps you navigate inside the court. So when I reach the gate, I call them, and some volunteer comes and they take me to the court, and they take me wherever I have to go inside the court. Basically, I have to get a document notarized, I have to go to meet a lawyer, I have to go to a particular chamber. They would take me. So on that count, I would say Delhi High Court is improving, but some other high courts still do not have this kind of a system. Actually, most of them do not. And even digitally speaking, these websites and the portals, etc., are not accessible. And as for Supreme Court, also, I would say that there can be improvements made, but right now accessibility committee is I think doing phenomenal job at assisting lawyers with disabilities in terms of navigating inside the court, and the website is also improving day by day. But in terms of what can be done, and I speak from a very limited experience, I would like to remind you that I am a blind lawyer. I cannot speak for lawyers with other kinds of disabilities, and I have mostly dealt with only Supreme Court and Delhi High Court, so I can majorly speak for them. I think the website can be made more robust, because a lot of times it is down, and that is, I think, a concern of able-bodied lawyers as well. And in terms of the filing and bookmarking requirements, etc., they can be made more accessible. And lastly, and most importantly, I would say that when we talk about disability inclusion, we restrict our conversations to access and attitudes, which is a very fair thing to do. I mean, obviously, if your building is not accessible, your website is not accessible, then a lawyer with disability will not be able to navigate it. And if you do not have the attitude, then even if there is a lawyer with disability, you won't give them a serious matter. You would think that they're not competent only without giving them a chance. So obviously, access and attitude both are very important. I would say attitude is most important. But I would like to talk about a third aspect which has been not considered much in public debate and discussion. It's affordability. Disability comes with a very high cost. I, more often than not, forget that I placed my charger in the drawer of my table, and I forget that I have it, and I think I've lost it, and I buy another one. A simple a cup of tea that might cost 10 rupees for a person who is sighted, for example, would cost me 200 rupees because I love chai and I order from Chayos. So, these are simple things that like laws and policies don't consider. We often talk about the gender, that laws are gender blind. They're also disability blind. Actually, blind is a wrong word. I should say disability ignorant. Like there's a lack of lack of practical reasoning. In feminist legal methods, we used to read about practical feminist reasoning, and I would like to say there's a lack of that kind of practical disability reasoning as well. I'll give you an example. We had gone to the Supreme Court to say that we need to give our AIBE or India Bar Examination exam on a laptop instead of taking a scribe, because the question paper is very long and it takes a lot of time for a scribe to read, whereas our screen reader helps us read it faster. And more importantly, I should be able to decide what I write in my exam. What if I'm, saying something and the scribe doesn't note down it with as much accuracy and efficiency that I want them to? So this is where we went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court allowed us also that, okay, you can take your exam on a computer. This is where the direction of the court ended. I went to the exam hall, which was some 60 kilometers away from my house. Again, no consideration for the fact that I'm technically a blind person, and if at all I have gone to the Supreme Court to ask for an accommodation. One accommodation that could have been made like by way of common sense is to give me a center closer to my house, but not getting into that also. I went there, I called the person that I had to, I was asked to call up. I called them about 2-3 times to tell them that there might be a lot of crowd because it's the peak and everyone is waiting for the door to open so that they can go and take the exam. And I asked them to come and navigate me to the exam, inside the exam, the classroom in that school where I had to sit and take the exam. I called them 2-3 times, they didn't take their call, and eventually my cab driver dropped me outside the school. And there was a lot of crowd, obviously, and there was a very high chance that I might have fallen because there was a lot of rush. It was only at the end that a student came to me and they helped me navigate inside the gate. The point being that the direction of the court stopped at, okay, this person has come to us, and give them the reasonable accommodation that they need. Let them take the exam on the laptop. And court provided very specific directions that, install the screen reader on their laptop, on your laptop, let them test it one day before the exam, and then on the day of the exam you can give them the question paper in so and so format and they can give their answers in so and so format. The court's directions are very specific, but again, law has its own constraints, right? That is the shortcoming of legal positivism. How much can the court say? The court can't say that, okay, when this person is outside their cab, you will come and you will take them inside the classroom that they have to sit inside, because there might be a lot of crowd inside the outside the school, outside the exam hall. So this is where I feel, when we speak of inclusion, I think inclusion should go beyond what is being said on paper. If let's say, I'll give another example. If Rights of Person with Disability Act says that a person with disability has right to community life or right to housing, you can't have it unless these residential facilities are made accessible. So, I mean, it's time for us to look at inclusion not in terms of what is written on paper, the exclusive positivism sense. It is time for us to look at inclusion more practically. What is this person really asking for? What will practically help them navigate the situation? So, and that's my request to courts, institutions, and institutions are teaching law, institutions are hiring lawyers with disabilities, and think of inclusion in more practical sense.
You've spoken so beautifully about how there are still problems when it comes to execution of such landmark decisions, such landmark guidelines. The next question is actually that when we talk about these Supreme Court decisions in the recent times, they're so welcomed when it comes to, okay, it's a stride in the right direction for upholding the rights of PwDs. But when we talk about the grassroots level implementation, where do you think we're, as a society, as a system, falling back to actually having these things executed properly?
So, the first problem is that Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act is not taken seriously by all states. It's just our federal system. That's how it works. each state in this country would have a different quantum of pension for a person with disability. Some states would say that we will give you a pension only if you have 40% disability. Others would say that we'll give you only if you have 50% disability. There's no clarity on how to assess disability. I think that's the first important step in getting any kind of benefit under the RPWD Act. So even if the court has, let's say, said that you will be provided with reasonable accommodation or reservations if, let's say, you have any mental health illness, where do we have the infrastructure to even assess if someone has that disability? So first point is that there's need for uniformity. We need to, as a country, sit together and decide what is the basic minimum standard of life that we want to give to persons with disability. As per 2011 census, there are 3.3 million. We don't know the numbers now because census has not happened, but I'm sure it's way more than this. So first is for us, for the system, to look at what is the minimum standard that you want to give, and that minimum standard should be in conformance with these judgments. Judgments like Vikas Kumar, judgments like Om Rathod, judgments, so many of them that say that Rajiv Rathuri, which say that accessibility is not a negotiable thing. It cannot be a matter of progressive realization alone. It has a mandate under the Act. They have recently in Pragya Prasoon and Amar Jain versus Union of India, they've said that even digital accessibility forms a part of Article 21. So you're right, courts have said a lot of things, and courts have said groundbreaking things. In Vikas Kumar, Justice Chandrachud goes to say that a reasonable accommodation forms a part of Golden Triangle and it applies to persons with disability. He talks about this concept of RPWD generation, where the people who are under this generation, the RPWD generation, they will not seek any kind of entitlement as charity. They have accessibility, reasonable accommodation, and full inclusion in all its shapes and forms as their birthright. So this strong language from courts doesn't really mean anything till the time there is a coordination among all the organs of the state, the administrative wing, the executive, the parliament, and all across the states. They will have to come up with a minimum standard that they have to provide, and that minimum standard should be nothing less than what the Constitution gives us. Disability is definitely not included in Article 15 explicitly, but now there is a whole lot of jurisprudence to say that disability is a part and parcel of Article 15. And we've also ratified the UNCRPD. So we cannot really claim to be a Viksit Bharat or a digital India, Sugamya Bharat, etc. till the time we are also including such a major chunk of our population. So that is as for systems. And as for society, every problem that a person with disability faces, it stems from a bias. A bias which is not rooted in reality. A bias that has never been researched on. For example, corporates might feel that the cost of reasonable accommodation is very high. But there was this study that was run under ADA, America, where they actually, with statistics, showed that the cost of reasonable accommodation is actually nominal. For example, education institutes might feel that persons with disability are not really a priority and it's fine, like kitne hi aate hain. But the crux of the matter is that we've seen so many professionals with disability excel so well in different areas, ranging from law to medicine to engineering to accountancy, politics, influencers, whatnot. So it is a very, very sad state of affairs if education institutes also overlook persons with disabilities. And last but not the least, like I've covered employers and education institutes. Last, I would say consumers, like that's another relevant point of contact for lawyers, people who avail our services.
Anchal, what advice would you give to young law students, young lawyers with disability who are trying to break into the profession?
First is, don't think that it's the end of the world. And I know I'm saying something very basic and something very rudimentary, but I still know people who struggle with it. People who are still very ashamed of calling themselves a person with disability. And I think first is to get rid of that shame. I mean, honestly, it's just another kind of difference, and there's nothing burdensome about it, nothing to be ashamed of. It's something actually to be proud of. But I don't even want to patronize it at the same time. It's just another variation of human beings, and it should be accepted. It's a decent enough difference. Uh, Second is to, you know, ensure that you have a network of mentors. That really, really helps. They may not be very inaccessible people or people who are extremely popular. That's not the requirement. A person who understands you, a person who looks beyond your disability, who looks at you as a person. And I've been fortunate enough to have such mentors, and I feel having these mentors is very, very important. Third is to make yourself count. Uh, do not wait for anyone to open the door. Nobody who has any kind of power has ever opened a door for a person who's powerless. Every marginalized person has had to break the door and enter and shout to get basic things. So do not hold yourself back from breaking the door and then shouting. It's fine. And it's extremely important. No one is going and I mean, even though it's ideal that institutions come and ask us, oh, what is your reasonable accommodation need? That doesn't happen. You will have to negotiate for it yourself. That also doesn't mean become bitter, but like negotiate with respect, negotiate with diplomacy, ask for what is reasonable, and do not be afraid of asking. But at the same time, if you are denied a right, then have the wherewithal and have the thick skin to fight against it, because it doesn't come easy, and it requires a lot of effort. Yeah.
Coming on to our last question, who is that idol that you would look up to when you are faced with difficulties and you really want to remind yourself that I have to go on and I cannot quit?
There cannot be one answer to this question ever, I think, or anyone.
Name a few.
Yeah. One is definitely my mother, and I would like to name her because and I request you not cut this also.
We won't.
Her name is Shashi Bhatheja, and I more than my name, I would like the world to know her name, and I think that's what I live for. That maybe people can just know that I'm her daughter. People can just be thankful that she gave birth to me. That's the most important. Then obviously my father, my sister, my friends, a bunch that I met in school, 5-6 of them in college. These people have really helped me navigate through toughest challenges of life, ranging from doing a trek to navigating a health scare in college, or just listening to my rants about I'm not getting accessibility or like reasonable accommodation in college or workplace, or that so and so professor is not being nice to me. In every sense, I would say, logistically, emotionally, I would say that after my father and my sister, my friends would come. And lastly, in terms of mentors, I would say there were a few professors in law school. I would say Professor Rahul Singh, Professor Rashmi Venkatesan, Professor Kunal Ambasta, who were very conscious and aware of my access needs. Outside of college, I would say Mr. Rahul Bajaj, Mr. Amar Jain, Dhwani Mehta, who is at Vidhi. They are wonderful people, and they've looked at me beyond my disability, and they've handheld me, and they've trusted me, most importantly, because I think after I lost my eyesight, the biggest difficulty was that even my father won't rely on me for a lot of things, because he would think that since I'm disabled, I can't do anything. And that's not his bias, it's just his protectiveness as a parent that sometimes manifests itself as distrust. But when you see such people who, like mentors and employers who give you a fair chance, who do not see your accommodation needs as burdensome, who do not treat you any different from a fresher, because there's also sometimes that as a person with disability you would commit different kinds of mistakes. Like a fresher who's sighted would commit a mistake in like whatever, naming the party or whatever, something that happens that is more common among sighted people, the kind of mistakes that are common among sighted people. So a blind person is more likely to commit an error in let's say spelling a name that sounds similar. For example, spelling Rajiv as Rajive instead of Rajeev, for example. So like these mentors, the special thing about them that I felt is that they do give me a chance to commit mistakes, because I do not commit mistakes because I'm a person with disability. I commit mistakes because I'm a fresher, and that is a difference that employers, mentors, etc. need to realize. So for me, I think it's predominantly been these people who've shown me the path.
So Anchal, as we come to the end of this interview, I know you're a beautiful singer, and we'd be delighted if you sing a few lines of any song that is close to your heart and helps you get through a difficult day.
Yeah, sure. It's Zindagi Pyar Ka Geet Hai by Lata ji, if I'm not wrong. It's very close to my heart. I'll just sing a few lines. जिसका जितना हो आंचल यहाँ पर, उसको सौगात उतनी मिलेगी. जिसका जितना हो आंचल यहाँ पर, उसको सौगात उतनी मिलेगी. फूल दामन में गर ना खिले तो कांटों से भी निभाना पड़ेगा. जिंदगी प्यार का गीत है, जिसे हर दिल को गाना पड़ेगा. जिंदगी गम का सागर भी है, हंस के उस पार जाना पड़ेगा.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience with us. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Dear viewers, do like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such videos. Thank you.